Hi, everybody. This is my project on predictive research for our example case with the assault between Mark and Jason. I'm Haley. Of course, you would probably know that. Um, so, this is the facts of the case. Two guys drinking. One dares the other to punch him. He doesn't want to. One guy grabs him by the wrist. Other guy pulls away, and he ends up punching him in the face, leaving him with a broken jaw and missing teeth. And so, the other guy ends up with a lawsuit. Not very happy people. So, my state that I'm doing mine in is Washington, so that's going to be my jurisdiction. So, the first thing we want to ask is what constitutes as assault. So, I'm going to go over here and I just basically entered in the search bar what are the elements of civil assault, and it pops up this case right here. And it went to the direct quote for this document, and it says which ours will fall under the first definition of assault, which is unlawful touching. This was technically unlawful because the guy did inflict. He had, as you can see in the second form of it, is doing it but failing to do it. So that's attempted battery, but it's unlawful touching. In our case, he gave permission. And so that brings us into whether or not consent was a defense for uh, assault. And so we go over here, and I kind of gave this example by search. I found this example by searching consent with the same paragraph as assault. So this one, oh, sorry. I wanted to show you guys first. I wanted to see if there was actually any definition of what consent was. And so although most of the stuff came up as search and seizure, as you could probably tell, that's the majority of what it is usually. So basically it has to be voluntary and the person must have the authority to give consent. So and this could be applied kind of to our case. The person has to do it voluntary. And while our guy did do it voluntary, he was intoxicated. And so I tried, it's really difficult to find cases to where it's kind of incorporating all those factors. But in this one, the guy, they were friends. They were playing a game of basketball, and while the guy did consent to the game, and that does have contact in it, he did. The guy basically he punched him and he broke his jaw like the guy in our example, but the court actually did not upheld his defense that he gave consent yeah, it says consent defense to assault is not limited to the rules within the game, and it's more the consent for this part was that that it is to conduct harm is to conduct and harm, not necessarily. They're usually reasonably foreseeable hazards of participation, not getting like straight up punched by this guy just because they got in an argument on the court. And so I feel like this could kind of apply to our like case possibly. Um, the next thing we're going to go to is this. I wanted to just mention this kind of really was similar to what ours was doing. These kids were playing a choking game, basically to where they were choking people to the point of they would lose consciousness. And while they consented to doing it, they it really wasn't their choice to consent. It doesn't say in our case whether or not the people were consenting adults and they had the capabilities to do it. But I feel like that does have to play a factor in this case as to whether or not this guy could knowingly consent to being punched in the face. And so the next thing we're going to look at, I wanted to also look at this. It was just talking about. I don't really know which one this would be considered, but this is what I found on assault. This is assault in the second degree. It just kind of goes to the different factors of what it could be considered. And so this one, it says a person is guilty of assault in the second degree if he or she, under circumstances not amounting to assault in the first degree. And so it's basically intentionally hitting another person and thereby actually inflicting substantial bodily harm. I feel like that's what this guy did. So that I could see this being second degree if it was charged or if the judge decided to do what he wanted to do. And so that I just found by just doing defenses in the same paragraph as assault. And while this didn't really bring up defenses for it, that was really hard to find for some reason. But I also found this, which was another instance to where these guys were just messing around. They had BB guns, and the guy was they were just shooting them. It was a game. It was like I guess like paintball, similar to that. But the victim gave consent to the game, but it was not a. The court had ruled that it was not. And sorry, that's my dog snoring. It did not constitute to a defense to an assault charge. So basically, what I'm finding is that Washington does not uh, uphold consent as a defense to assault. And this was an unpublished opinion, so that's why I'm kind of putting it towards the end. But this guy, he got in a fight with his twin brother. He claimed again that his brother, it was not considered, they wanted to try it as domestic violence, so since it was sibling on sibling fighting. But I just kind of wanted to mention this to see that the court they ended up not saying they said that it wasn't a viable defense basically, and they they ended up saying that he was guilty of fourth degree assault. So basically, yeah, we kind of have to go into I also wanted to go into kind of finding about like, does intoxication have any influence? uh the the things that I found with intoxication had to do with driving, and a lot of these, especially in the state of Washington, and we can just go over here and like pull up one of. Let's see, we can go up here and pull up if we type in assault in the same paragraph as intoxication. You really don't find too much, but hold on one second. Uh, doo, doo, doo. It's more of the person being intoxicated and getting into a fight with somebody, not necessarily the guy giving consent and being intoxicated. But you could look up intoxication and consent, and we could try and see if that found anything. And I believe I did end up looking this up, and it's really vague. Their laws are very vague. Um, this one basically was just DUIs and stuff. It didn't really have anything to do. It was really hard to apply the intoxication factor into the consent with this aspect, but I wasn't really able to find much on withdrawn consent either. So basically, we could just do it withdrawn consent. Ah. Excuse me. And you really just don't find much on that either. I don't know if there's just not that many cases or what, but the withdrawn consent again has to do a lot with either rape or DUIs, and that's not really this. So basically, I'm going to say that the judge, I really think that he would end up uh, still putting the case going forward because the law in this state doesn't uphold the defense that he consented to it. So I'm just going to say that the judge would not grant a motion to dismiss.